Good afternoon. I hope that you are having a good day. I am surely having a good day for multiple reasons. And we'll get into that. But thanks for being here, you guys. Appreciate it. And looking forward towards a fun conversation here that we're going to have. And had to get on a little earlier today than usual. And maybe for you East Coast folks, it's not convenient, or maybe it is convenient. I have no idea. But part of the reason why I have to get on now is because I got an appointment at 2. So, man, I've probably seen way too many doctors over the last 2 weeks. And again, it's not too serious, but it's not. I check up waiting for my glasses to come in. But I got an MRI done last week on my knee because it's been bugging me. And so I went to the doctor today, early in the morning, and to get all the results back. And to be frank with you, I was expecting him to tell me, your knee is royally jacked up and we're going to have to do surgery on it, because that's what the results have shown. But my doctor said, hey, it's all good news. There's really nothing wrong with your knee. Which I guess is complicated. Look, there's no tears, which is awesome. I thought that I had a tear, definitely a pretty bad tear. I was getting ready for surgery, and mentally. And he said, we're not seeing anything there. There might be something really small, but it really doesn't warrant us moving aggressively towards surgery and stuff like that. And so he said, let's get you some physical therapy. And physical therapy should be what fixes the problem. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to wait. So on my way home from the doctor's office, I called a physical therapy therapist and scheduled for me to go in for my first initial visit today at 2 p.m. So it's 11:20 right now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave, head on over there, and work on that. And then I got to see a therapist twice a week for 6 weeks, which is not so bad. Hopefully all of that fixes whatever's going on, and I will be able to play soccer once more. But I have been told to not play soccer, which I haven't done since July, which is horrendous, which also is like this. I want to lose weight. I got some weight I got to lose, and I can't if I can't play soccer, because it's the only thing that will get me exercising. I don't really like the gym very much, but I can't do any of those things, really. Hopefully, they'll be all good. Oh, man, hang on. Jacob, what's up, man? Backdoor Talk. What's up, bro? How you doing? An American Baptist theology of food. If the church bird is fried, consider it sanctified. Amen. Hey, Nick, whatever you say, my brother, whatever you say. Joshua, what's up? How you doing, bro? Been to the doctor's bunch with my mother. Diagnosed with cancer. They can't cure it, really treat. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that, and mine is definitely not as serious as that. But thank you for sharing. During that time, so on my drive to the doctor's, waiting in the doctor's office, and on my drive back, I was able to listen to a considerable amount of the George Jenko podcast that had the Christian Avengers on it. Not going to make too big of a deal of that. I just, one of the things I'm realizing, I guess, is, and I guess this is a reply to Michael Jones, because he's like, what are they avenging? Why are they called the Christian Avengers? They're not dealing with actual avenging. God bless his heart. And I get what he's saying. But I think like probably the term is being used in a way where a group of people that have a common purpose get together. They're just being called Avengers. That might be a possibility. So overall, let me see how many % of this I've actually listened to.
Conversations. Let's go.
Okay, so the conversation's 3 hours and 1 minute. I'm actually at the 2 hours and 3 minute mark. So I got about an hour to go. And so far, it's just been a decent conversation. Like I was thinking it's going to be a lot worse. Look, I can be the annoying guy. I really can. Trust me. I can be the annoying guy who nitpicks at every single thing. And people might say things or express themselves in certain ways in where I can be like, nah, don't say it like that. Say it like this. And that just becomes no fun. Nobody will want to be your friend. And it's just not a good character trait to have. Now I've been trying to take notes. I think at the 46-minute mark, there's a whole conversation about Adam naming animals that Johnny brings up. And I want to address that because I think what he's saying is true. But the way he's coming to it is awkward and weird. We'll speak about that when whether now or some other time I make a video on it and release it. And then there's a whole conversation about sacrifices that's very interesting to me because it's the exact context I grew up in. That I probably resonate with George a lot more in regards to what's going on. And then there's a conversation they're going through on the Eucharist that I think needs to be clarified a little bit because I've seen videos of Catholics kind of reacting to it. Ruslan's done a reaction, who's in the conversation. I haven't seen Ruslan's response to that, but I'm still in it. Got about an hour to go. And then once I finish it, I'm hoping I can finish it today. And then maybe I'll address it tomorrow. Or something like that. I did release another video and then so let's see how that's doing. Okay. Praying for your knee. Having gone through knee surgery, I'll pray for rest and wisdom. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really, really happy that the doctor said it looks good, the MRI looks good, and we're not going to move aggressively to do surgery. It's really not necessary, which is always a good thing to hear. Yeah, so I'm right at that section, man. I'm right there. And I don't know what he means by that. Again, let's be gracious to one another, man. Balaki. Blake, what's going on? Hey, Arthur. Happy for the good news watching you from the airport before catching a flight. God bless. Man, where are you off to, man? That's cool. I love airplanes, and I tolerate airports, but I really love airplanes. IP is so old, he makes me feel old. IP is not old. He's a young man. He's just old-spirited. He has an old soul, as they say. He's just a grumpy man. He owns it. Look, that's the cool thing about Mike Jones. Mike Jones is that he just owns being a grumpy person. Now let the joy of the Lord be in his life and heart. That's important. The Nick Pope is here. Yeah, well, Nick Pope is not here. I'll tell you that. Brooklyn Lou, what's up, man? Did Jesus ever have a sexual desire? I've made a video on this. Lou. There is a video about this. If so, he had sexual thoughts of someone was not his wife and sinned according to Jesus himself, Matthew 5:18. If not, he was not tempted in all things. 4:15. Hey, Lou. So here's my thing, Lou. You said you were a Christian, as far as I remember. How would you, as a Christian, answer this question? Like, did you think about this question as a Christian? Do you really think this is a good question? Now, I can answer this very simply, and I will. But again, like I said, I have a video on this. You can go check it out. I'm just curious. Whenever I get questions like this, especially from people who said that they were Christians, I'm curious to know how you thought about these things as a Christian and whether your categories were properly aligned or not. So let me put it this way. How would you have answered this when you were a Christian? And if you were a Christian right now, how would you answer it? Because that's telling to me. Those questions are telling us to how well you understand Christianity. And then I'll give you my answer once you write that down. Have you read James Agnew? I think that's James Agnew's book, What Jesus Didn't Know, A Defense of Kinetic Christology. He engages with William Lane Craig and others. Very interesting. Free on Kindle and Amazon. Kindle's going away, by the way. Like, you got to download your Kindle books that you've bought. Just saying. Look that up if you're like a Kindle user. I have not. 100% free. Or paperback. $15. Okay. No, I haven't. So I will check that out. I'll download it. Check it out. Thank you for that, Mr. Nick Pope. I mean, Pope Nick. You know, about 3 months ago, I had persistent knee issues for 6 months. Hey, that sounds about right for me. And thought for sure it was a torn ACL. It clicked and all. Then magically my knee healed back to normal. Praise the Lord. That's really cool. Look, I know when I heard it. I remember when I hurt my knee. So yeah. Okay. Do you know who Frank Turek is? I do know who Frank Turek is. He posted a video. He had a Latter-day Saint talk about biblical. You told me this, Jacob. I think you posted the video in Discord. And it's one of the guys that was on Jubilee. Right. I haven't seen it, but I know you've posted about it. Thank you. I will check that out whenever. Yes, he had sexual desires. That which is not assumed is not healed. He did not sin. So here's the problem. And again, I'm still waiting for Lou to answer it, and he hasn't. But Lou, let me just frankly say, sexual desires, physical sexual desires, are not in and of themselves sinful. It's like being hungry, right? To assume. Okay, here's Lou's answer. So I'll respond to it. Never thought of this when a Christian probably would have tried to say that lust and desires are two different things, and have a desire is not temptation. There you go. So here's the problem with it, is that you're assuming because you have a physical desire. In your question, you said, if he did them, then he would have thought about someone else's wife. And that's a false assumption. Your question is the incorrect one. And I think that's a pretty good answer that you just came up with. You should have thought about it as a Christian. I've thought about it many times as a Christian because I try to take my Christology seriously and the idea that Jesus became a man very seriously. So in what ways did Jesus become man? Well, in all the ways except sin. So he didn't have a sin nature and he didn't sin. So what are those things that are true of human beings that don't necessarily require sin? So Adam and Eve were created in such a state in which they would have physical desires for sex. And so I would say Jesus was never internally tempted, obviously, because he doesn't have a sin nature to be tempted internally. He had desires, like hunger and thirst. And I think sexual desires are of that sort, but he never acted out on it. He never sinned. I'm sure there was outside temptations, and there's a difference between that. Jesus was tempted. I'm sure there's temptations out there for him as well, and he never sinned. So this question is not like it. I don't know whether it's always the weirdness of talking about sex that makes people think this question is a lot stronger, or it's a really, really good kind of strong thing. But yeah, there's a very simple answer to it. Now, your conclusion you come to, and if you would have done that, you're right. He would have sinned according to Matthew 5:18. Those conclusions you come to, I think, are would be true if that, and they're not true because they were not that. Right? So Jesus' temptation is not internal temptation; it's external temptation, and it's external temptation in Christian theology comes in two forms. Number one, it comes from other people. Number two, it comes from spiritual principalities and powers of darkness. Okay, clean glasses. Still I think I gotta wait another week for my new pair to come in. It'd be really cool if they called me today and they were like, "Hey, your glasses are in. Come get them." That'd be phenomenal. Jesus was tested, yet without the enemy. Withstood the enemy. I need glasses. Withstood the enemy. Yes, Jesus is perfect. Jesus said, "I am." Thank you, Ferdinand. Tested and tempted sometimes are the same exact word and meaning. So, yeah. Oh, these are doctor's advice. I've read a lot about connective tissue and how it can have a spot like an island within the tissue that is deteriorating, and the rest of the tissue overcompensates. Oh, thank you very much. That's helpful. Assuming is dangerous in itself. Okay. The group Squat University has some good articles on it and how to move so you don't lose the tensile capacity of tissue. Oh, I stand corrected. Yes, correct. That's what you said. Hey, Zach, what's going on? Thank you for that. Ferdinand, is it your first time on my channel? Let me know if it's your first time on my channel. I was listening to your live stream on the Trinity and wanted to ask your view. When somebody says the members of the Godhead have the same essence, is that the same as saying they share a nature? Yes. That's not my view. That's exactly what they're saying. Essence and nature are synonymously used. The temptation is when you look at a woman and do have a sexual desire. If he did not have a sexual desire, he was not tempted in that way. Nothing more to say about that. Yep. Okay. Second, I might have missed something. Sorry. No, you're good, man. You're good. It's just like one of the things that I think is probably helpful is like on this channel we have free conversations. When I say free, I mean open conversations. I try to create a space on this channel where Christians can air out their theological difficulties, where atheists can come and challenge Christians, and not just atheists, right? Jacob is a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. And so we can discuss these things and people can assume things, people can question things, and are those things dangerous? I suppose so, but so is thinking. right? Just want to clarify kind of where we stand as a community and the way I run this ministry. I want people to have the freedom to ask the sort of questions that I think Lou is asking. So that's partly like, I hope you noticed that I was like, hey, Lou, you claimed you were a Christian at one point or another. Did you think about this when you were a Christian? And thank you for Lou's honesty. And Lou says, you know what? No, I didn't. But if I were to answer that, I'd answer it this way. Well done. We're having a good conversation. We're having a productive conversation. We're thinking about stuff that people are generally uncomfortable to think about. And so, yeah, we're going to go down rabbit trails and we're going to assume things and we're going to bring it back and talk about scripture and how that fits within general theology and philosophy and all of the above. I mean, that's, for me, that's doing apologetics in a holistic sense, in a worldview sense. How do I answer X question within my Christian worldview and paradigm, and what does that look like? And so the reason why I'm saying this is because, like, what really bugs me is like trying to put a stop to the conversation before the conversation can actually continue and move on. Like, I hope you get it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Alex says, what's up, Alex, man? It's good for you. It's good to have you back on this channel. Appreciate you, man. I'm interested on your thoughts on Jesus throwing the table in the temple. So Jesus goes into the temple. It's called a cleansing of the temple. Jesus goes into the temple and he sees what is happening in the temple and he gets angry. He makes a whip out of some cords and he chases these people out of the temple. That's essentially what's going on. And he says, you have turned... he essentially says, my house should be a house of prayer for all nations, but you have turned it into a den of robbers and thieves. So here's my question back to you. What is your question specifically so that I know how to address what you're actually asking me? So you're interested on my thoughts on Jesus throwing, like... So my assumption would be that you think there's some kind of a problem with Jesus getting angry. And you just don't picture Jesus as being the sort of guy that would get angry. Or that you might equate anger with sin. And that becomes problematic. Jesus never sinned, but he got angry. So what's going on there? So help me put in. Wow, I'm having a hard time talking today. Put it into perspective for me, brother. And folks, there's 16 of us in here. 16 of you, 17 including me sitting on this side. Do me a favor and hit the like button. Hey, one thing I should just state, and I think you guys do this because I see this more, but I would appreciate you guys sharing out the videos from this channel. And I know, like, my assumption is that you're probably not going to be sharing the live streams. Some of you guys do because you're cool like that. But at least the shorter videos that I post that if you find helpful, like, we'd appreciate you spreading the word about this channel and all that really cool stuff. Him throwing the table makes me think of the flood, righteous cleansing. Okay. Thanks, man. Thank you. So, yeah, I generally, the question that Alex is asking, the whole, cleansing of the temple, in my experience, it's always been about how can he get angry if he is without sin, right? Think a person who's been around for eternity should be a bit more diplomatic. You have pretty high standards of morality and behavior, I guess. Okay. There seems to be an underlying assumption here is that being diplomatic is a better way of doing things. And there might be room for that. I'm just not always convinced of it. Like, I can assume being diplomatic with my children at times is probably the worst decision. And again, Alex, I don't know if you're married and if you have kids, or if you're in leadership positions anywhere. Sometimes being diplomatic and democratic is not necessarily the best thing to do. Rather than going straight to for anger, he could have easily done it in a different way. Well, that's if you don't assume the fact that God had continuously sent prophets warning the people to repent from their sins. See, the thing is that I understand the entirety of the biblical narrative, and God is constantly patient for hundreds and hundreds of years towards people repenting. As a matter of fact, right before the coming of Jesus, God sends the last of the prophets, the greatest of the prophets, John the Baptist, and John the Baptist is calling out that same problem and calling people to repentance. And so by the time Jesus gets there, I think there's been quite a bit of warnings there. And so whether he could have been more diplomatic, I don't know how you can come to that conclusion. I guess so, but for me, there's no problem with him going and righteously getting angry as to you got to understand the heinousness of what they're doing. And at times, it is completely justifiable when you see a great evil being done for you to react in righteous anger. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, I don't know whether you understand, Alex. Not everyone would have heard of the prophets. No, that's not true. Everybody would have heard about the prophets. Everyone there is Jewish. Everybody there had the revelation of God. Everybody there was raised on that. So your assumption there, Alex, is completely false. Like, zero. I mean, you couldn't go into that area if you were not a follower of Yahweh and Jewish. Like, I hope you understand that. Other ethnicities were not allowed to get into that area. Only Jews could be there. And so, yeah, I think that's just not true. What was I saying? Okay, I'll come back. My thought will come back to that. But yeah, so what is going on actually there? This is what I was trying to say. How heinous is the thing that these people are doing? And what would you do if you were in a situation where there's a great evil in front of you? And then, let's be diplomatic here. And sometimes there is no diplomacy in moments like that. There's righteous indignation in certain moments. I don't want to give all sorts of examples, but I think you can imagine situations in which it's necessary. My answer would be the megachurch movement and the prosperity ideology. Who has the right to ask anything of anybody? Yeah, look, I don't want to read into that stuff. So Ferdinand, what you're doing is reading modern stuff into the context of Jesus. Just don't do it. It's very unnecessary, right? They are doing great evil. They're overcharging for sacrifices to the Lord, right? And they're abusing people. They're financially abusing people where they are supposed to be the shepherds of the people. Remember, these are all religious leaders that are doing this stuff. They're supposed to be shepherding the people, and they're abusing the people. Think about that. Think about the betrayal of trust towards someone who's supposed to care for you. who is abusing you. And then the reaction you have towards a situation like that. And you go, oh, you got to be diplomatic. I know they abused you for like your entire life, but let's be diplomatic here. Again, Alex, I don't think that flies, man. I think when you are a Christian, you are not really allowed to question. Brooklyn Lou, that's just not true. You're not allowed to question Jesus because he is always right, and the question makes you a sinner. So, bro, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Like, I don't know what sort of a church and Christianity kind of you came out of. I think this is not. Forgive me. I think this is absolute nonsense, what you're saying. I question everything and anything. There's a healthy way of questioning things, and there's an unhealthy way of questioning things. And I think there's and I think that's wisdom to question things in a healthy manner. Isn't it interesting that I asked you whether you had questioned those things as Christian, and you said no, and I have. Not only have I questioned it, but I've also made a video about it. It's on the internet. Dylan will get to the passage. Okay, so you got a passage. Okay. We'll get to that, Dylan. Jerome, are you still red flagged in FPL? What? Red flagged for what? Jerome, I don't know what you're talking about. Am I red flagged? I don't know. Why would I be red flagged? Not injured. I don't think. Are you asking about specific players? I don't know what you're saying. Whatever. Text me, man. Chat looking lively today because we got lively people in here. Come on now, everybody give yourself a hand. Is it true when you are a Christian you cannot ever question the justification of God? He's always right. No, it's not. I mean, hey Lou, this is like I'm trying to say these things without being offensive or too offensive. Like, have you read the Old Testament? Like, have you read the book of Psalms? Do you not see people who constantly question God? Did you read when you were a Christian, the book of Habakkuk? When Habakkuk is complaining to God and questioning God on his methodology of punishment for his people? How can you read those stories and come to a conclusion that you can't ever question God? I don't know. Connor, how you doing, man? It may be a better question if coming at it from a Christian perspective to ask instead, why is that anger justified? The anger is justified because they are abusing the commands of God. It's spiritual abuse. They are financially and spiritually abusing their society. They're victimizing an entire population that's already poor and broken and beaten and oppressed by the Romans. Do you understand how bad that is a question that you ought to ask. And what kind of a reaction you would have towards that. That's what it really comes down to. That's a good way of putting it, Connor. I like it. What theological or philosophical topic interests you the most right now? Right now, the thing that interests me the most is probably the area that is called spiritual formation, spiritual growth, however you want, sanctification, however you want to think about it. That's something I'm investing a lot more into and focusing on and reading about and all of that. But generally speaking, in regards to like philosophical or theological subjects that interest me, there's probably two. I still haven't finished my book on Molina. Molinism is one because I enjoy it and like it, and I think it answers a lot of questions. And the other one would be God's relationship with time. So God and time is something that I don't think I will ever get bored of thinking about. What about wars in the okay? So Alex, you're just jumping around. Okay. Did we deal with the why Jesus gets angry subject before we move on to what about wars in the Old Testament? He could have been more diplomatic. Hey, by the way, I acknowledge and value your kind of appreciation for diplomatic resolution towards things. What about the Old Testament? He could have been diplomatic there as well. So give me some specifics. Yet he sometimes didn't even give a chance. When did he not give a chance? There are quite a lot of times he looks like he rushes in. So give me some examples. Oh, Ivan. This dude came in hot. One thing I've always struggled with, brother, can you please explain why Jesus would say, "Depart from me, I never knew you," because people who don't know him cannot be near him in relationship. If he never knew you, then you guys were not in a relationship. Why would he say that? Again, because there's no relationship there. There's no friendship with him there. One cannot be that individual that's being told, "Depart from me, I never knew you," is an individual essentially saying, there was nothing there between you and I. That's why. Guys, I'm really backed up on the question, so trying to catch up with you. Thoughts on Tertullian's stance against philosophy? Was it noble? It was noble and wrong. From what I understand, he eventually gave in to a philosophical framework called Montanism towards the end of his life. I don't remember whether that happened at the end of his life. The issue was that I think still exists today, is that I don't think Tertullian saw, and there might be good reasons for this, but I don't think Tertullian saw philosophy as a tool. Philosophy is a tool, and doing philosophy is something that is fundamental to our existence. We can't run away from philosophy. If we try to argue against philosophy, we will be doing philosophy. We will develop a philosophy of why philosophy is not important. The other thing is Tertullian's explanation of the Trinity is highly philosophical. But to be gracious to Tertullian and to kind of read in between the lines a little bit there, I would say Tertullian is probably reacting to his generation's reliance on Neoplatonism, Platonism, Neoplatonism, and the way philosophy was seen is very different than the way philosophy is seen today, because it was highly religious. And so I think there's a reaction there that could be a reaction there. Again, reading into the lines, giving the brother some grace into his reaction towards that. You just can't run away from it. Okay. As in, is your knee okay? That was a very weird way of asking that question, bro. I got really confused. Yes, my knee is okay. I'm not going to need surgery, but I do need to see a physical therapist for the next 6 weeks, twice a week. This is why soccer players are like out for a month and a half on a random injury. I just don't have doctors attending to me. And so it's taken a lot longer than that. I spent years at Calvary Chapel, years at a Methodist church, and years at Assemblies of God. Again, my question was whether you've read the text I mentioned. Bro, is that how you pronounce Habakkuk? I'm dead. I'm curious to know how you pronounce it. Habakkuk? Like, how would you pronounce it? How would you pronounce it? So God can be wrong? I know people question God, but God is always right. Is that correct? By definition, God would have to be an individual that is always right. There's no question about that. But that's not what you're asking. You're not asking a theological question as to whether God is always right. Your question is going towards more people's reaction and their freedom as Christians. And maybe you have a confusion of categories here. But whether people of God, legitimate people of God, have the right to question God. And what I'm telling you is the very book that God has revealed to us has people in it who are complaining to him and questioning him. So to me as a Christian, I don't know whether when you were a Christian, whether this was in your frame of thought. To me as a Christian, that tells me that God is okay with us questioning him. So to say that as a Christian, you can't ever question God is a ridiculously false statement, considering that God's given us a book in which people question him. And so I question God. And I have a methodology of coming to understand those things. So I think, look, Lou, I think there's a categorical mistake you're making here between God being right and then between what his revelation says and the way we are to live our lives. So Connor is saying, I think what Lou's coming at is from a Christian worldview, you assume the Bible's correctness. If you're questioning it, you are questioning from self-criticism perspective. I think Jesus was wrong, which means I misunderstand. That's not necessarily true. It really depends on the sort of study that you're doing. And I didn't say that's not true, by the way. I said it's not necessarily true. In which, like, what am I doing as a study? So I could take on Lou's world, for example, like I'm like, okay, for study purposes, I'm going to believe everything Lou believes in. And I'm going to question the Bible the way Lou questions the Bible. I have the ability to do that. I have done that. I've read, I think, in my opinion, some of the best atheist thinkers out there. And I've taken seriously their concerns about the existence of God, the arguments for, the arguments against God's existence and against Christianity. So to say that I can't do that is it's just not true. When do you do these streams? I would like to be more involved. Just subscribe, hit the bell notification button, and join the Discord if you want, Ferdinand. All that stuff is in the description box. You can jump onto Patreon. I'd recommend everybody jump onto Patreon. You can be a free patron. I'm trying to restart some Bible studies through the book of Ecclesiastes, which is a very interesting book considering some of the stuff that Lou's bringing up. That's in the Bible. It's sort of like the other day I was watching something, I forget what it was, but the individual said something like sex is a sin or something like that. And then the response was, have you read Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon? Like, really? Yeah, Fernand, I don't have a necessary, like, I don't have a schedule where I'm like, okay, I try to go live at least 3 times a week. I used to go live every day, but my schedule's changed in a way where I go live at least 3 times a week. So I try to go live Mondays and then Thursdays, Fridays. This week, I think we're going to get, did I go live Monday? I think I went live Monday, and then I did Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah, I did a stream yesterday. It was a shorter one. But yeah, just keep up, man. I think God perceives time the way we perceive objects. That's assuming time is a material thing. Okay. When the Israelites were taking a lot of the cities, God commanded them, they would have. I just think someone who wants to preserve creation would have. So, Alex, how familiar are you with the Old Testament? Like, because the text literally says God is giving these people 400 years to repent before that entire situation happens. Like, God tells Abraham, your people are not going to inherit this land because I'm going to be patient with the inhabitants of this land for 400 years. Like, it's in the text. The concern you have towards why God is being so heavy-handed is because these people, the sort of things they're doing, so let's just say child sacrifice is one of the most heinous things that you see, ought to know better. I can give you all sorts of reasons why they ought to know better, not to kill their kids. And if somebody sits there and says like, well, it's like, just consider our society and the way we kill our children. And what you do about that and how you react to that. And then there's the judgment that comes. So there's a 400-year gap in between these statements. And then you're telling me, well, he could have done it better. It's like, okay, cool. I would say religion must be connected to philosophy and not so much scientific, because science relies on observation, demonstration, evidence. Philosophy is a tool and does not prove anything. Lou, do you see the problem in your statement? Like, I'm sorry, it's too simple, man. It's way too simplistic. It's ridiculously simplistic. Philosophy is a tool and does not prove anything. And how do you know that, Lou? Is that a scientific observation you've made, or is that a philosophical conclusion that you're assuming? That's the problem. Now, let me restate it a little bit. Science studies a certain kind of thing, material stuff, right? And so therefore you could say categorically they're in different categories in regards to religion and the study of God, because God is not something, you pour in a, vase or whatever you go to tests on or something like that. And I'd say that's completely fine. God is not the sort of thing that science can study. But there's many things that are not the sort of things that science can study. For example, mathematics is not the sort of thing that science can study. As a matter of fact, science presupposes math in order for it to function. If science did not presuppose math, it would be unable to exist and function properly. So math is a more basic unit, if you would have it. Math is a more basic thing than science is. So you guys that are so committed to scientism, like, haven't thought through this very deeply. And one can argue that math, what is more fundamental to mathematics is logic, because logic doesn't need numbers in order for you to figure stuff out. And logic is a branch of philosophy. And so therefore philosophy is the most fundamental thing. And that's why you have a philosophy of everything. So you have a philosophy of mathematics, and you have a philosophy of science, and you have a philosophy of religion. And philosophy is the sort of thing that you don't have a philosophy of because it's self-correcting. You see the problem here. So yes, philosophy is a tool, and philosophy is necessary. Like, it would have been cool with you kind of stopping right before philosophy is a tool and does not prove anything. Once you wrote that down, you completely defeated your argument. It's dead in the water. Yes, read the Bible a few times, but have not in quite a few years. Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, there's no need to read it. But again, when you did read it, when you did read the Bible as a Christian, and you were like, oh, wait, look at this. People are complaining to God. They're questioning God. How did that impact you? Did that make you, like, did you have uk? Okay, that's not that bad. So I agree that people are allowed to question God, and people in the Bible did just that. But the questioning always must end with God is right. Is that accurate? You can say on a meta-narrative level, that's true. On a practical level, that's not always true. Clearly, look, Lou, you came to a conclusion that God is wrong and doesn't exist. And from within the Christian realm, right? Like, you came out of Christianity. You were not a product of non-Christian culture. You're a product of Christianity. And you were able to do that stuff. So the fact that someone like you exists defeats the stuff that you're saying about Christians. Do you understand that? That Christians can't question God. So, yeah, God is always right. If God existed, so the big if God existed, God would have to be the sort of thing that is always right. Now, can you think about God's existence as a Christian? Of course you can. And again, you're evidence of someone who's done that and come out saying he's no longer believes that. So again, defeats what you're trying to argue for. Hey, look who's here. Ashley, what's going on? Everybody go subscribe to Ashley's channel. I'm going to be on Ashley's channel. So Bible Show and Tell. I haven't pulled this up, Ashley. I got to pull this up right now. She had one of my favorite guys on there. I really like Parker Settecase.
Welcome to Bible Show and Tell. Today.
So I don't know what Ashley's going to be doing because I haven't watched this episode. That's Parker. Parker's been on my channel. But here we go. Live. Bam. Subscribe. I am your 53rd subscriber, I think. And yes is the answer to your question. I'd love to come on. We'll arrange that. And yeah, I'm interested in how you're going about this. It's really cool. So for those that might be interested in these kinds of conversations, you guys. There you go. Go check it out. Question. I didn't even read your question. Will you come on? Yes. Would you come on Bible Show and Tell and show us your favorite Bible? Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all. That was the easiest question I got tonight. That question was easier than Jerome in the weirdest way trying to ask if my knee is okay by making a reference to Fantasy Premier League and whether I am red flagged. And I'm opening up my app and I'm looking at it and I'm like, what? What is this guy talking about? And all Jerome had to do was say, hey, Art, what did the doctor say about your knee? if we are called to be humble and we are not without sin and are not able to judge the circumstances of others' lives, how can we as Christians ever be condemning of others? It's a really weird way of asking a very simple question. But let me put it this way. Jesus said, you do not judge, because the measure you use to judge others will be used against you. So there is no flat out statement about not judging. That's a misconception. Being humble doesn't mean you're not critical. That's a really, really strange way of thinking about humility. Being humble is thinking about oneself correctly, right? The Bible also tells us that we are to judge whether the fruits of other people. We are to look at the fruits of other people and determine. That's what I mean by judge. That's what judging is. You look and determine. You are to look at other people's lives and determine whether they are bearing the sort of fruit that they ought to be bearing. And so you can absolutely be humble and say we are without sin, because he who says he is without sin is a liar and the truth is not in him. And you can make a fair judgment of the circumstances of other people's lives. It doesn't have to be an unfair judgment. You can always make a fair judgment on other people's circumstances of their lives. But I don't believe that we are necessarily destined to be the products of our circumstances. If you don't have a conversation about that, trust me, I could be a victim of a humongous aspect of whatever circumstances were in my life. And by God's grace, I'm not. And so being a fair judge of someone doesn't necessarily mean that we are condemning them, right? So if I say to someone they are wrong about their view about God and Jesus and the Bible, I'm not condemning them. There's no condemnation there. I'm telling them that they're wrong, unless you give up the whole notion of truth in and of itself, or somehow you're correlating telling someone they're wrong with condemning, which is wrong. Good question. Is Melchizedek a Christophany or preview of Jesus? Some people believe that Melchizedek is a Christophany. I do not. My personal view is that Melchizedek is an actual individual who walked the earth and lived like you and I. So, but some people do believe Melchizedek is a Christophany, just to put that out there. I don't think he is. Unfortunately, science is a philosophy. Well, but let those who believe in scientism tell you it's not. What are your thoughts on Hume, specifically problem of induction and the guillotine? Coolest name for a philosophical riddle. I probably haven't thought about Hume and specifically that riddle for a while. So Connor, I'd have to go back and read some things and to give you a more articulate response, brother. I don't want to make a mess of a situation. And again, I don't know how much you've been on this channel and what your experiences of me, but sometimes I do get asked questions that I don't really know the answers to, or I haven't thought about for a while. And even though I might have some opinions on it, I won't share it because I don't think it'd be helpful. So, great question. No response, I guess, from me. Please share what the problem is. Are you saying philosophy proves things? By definition. Absolutely. No question about it. That's what inductive arguments are. That's what deductive arguments are. Their logic is a branch of philosophy. Do you understand that? Of course philosophy proves things. I mean, try arguing against philosophy, Lou. See how far that gets you. I know what the perception is. The highly recommend you read a book called God and Time, 4 Views. This view is an Augustinian view, by the way, when God looks at time simultaneously, past, present, future. Is a good point, Connor. Insofar as without philosophy, you don't have the theory of proof at all. Well said. I got to drink my tea. Different philosophies of religion, is that true? Yes, there is a whole branch of philosophy called the philosophy of religion. It's how you think about religion and whether concepts of God make sense or don't. There are concepts of God and the way it's defined that are completely meaningless and useless statements. Philosophy leads to different conclusions. Is that true? Lou, I don't think you're formulating your questions properly, brother. What does philosophy prove? You say philosophy again. You're thinking about philosophy as I don't know how you're viewing philosophy. Like, what does philosophy? Philosophy have different branches. Those branches within philosophy help you navigate reality. So, for example, one of the aspects of philosophy is metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of reality. In order for you to do science, which you are a champion of, in order for you to do science, you have to presuppose that reality actually exists and is orderly the way it is. You completely assume those things when you do science. But it's not a given to necessarily assume those things when you're doing philosophy. So when you do philosophy, when you do metaphysics, you are dealing with reality. And so when you come to those conclusions, the correct conclusions, then it gives you grounds to do science well. Now, you might not have thought about this, but when you go into doing your scientific studies, there's many assumptions you're making in order for you to do it. And those are all philosophical assumptions that philosophers speak about. And maybe scientists at times just assume it to be the case, and they don't realize how much philosophy is included in their science. This is really not a contentious point. It really is not. It's just the reality of the way things are. You use ethics, for example, in doing science. Why shouldn't we experiment on little children that are mentally handicapped? Like, why shouldn't the scientists have the ability to experiment on them and torture them? Well, that's an ethical assumption you got in science, because science has to be guided by ethics. It's not a free-for-all. Well, what the heck is ethics anyways? Oh, it's a branch of philosophy. At the end of the day, we aren't perfect. Okay, man. I still don't think, even after giving chance after chance, should result in... Well, Alex, you seem to be assuming an extremely high ethical standard within your atheism that I would... If I were debating with you, I would say, Alex, before you actually take those conclusions and put them on God, you got to justify why those conclusions within your atheism or non-beliefism is actually the standard we should live up to. Now, I would agree with your conclusion necessarily, or I wouldn't disagree necessarily. But what I would tell you is that you got to actually argue for that. If you're correct about these things, I admit I must be pretty stupid, but still, why would God make me too stupid to understand what you do? That's a cop out, man. Like seriously. I'm not going to exert myself to study. I'm sensing some sarcasm here, by the way, so I'll go with it. I'm refusing to exert myself and study these things and know what's going on. And instead of taking personal responsibility, I'm going to blame God for making me stupid. Cop out. Thank you for being the 53rd subscriber. Can't wait to have you on. Parker said he would do a video with you and I on my channel if you're up for it. Absolutely, man. I love Parker. Parker's the man. Parker has the mustache.
Welcome to Bible Show and Tell. Today,
Parker has the mustache that I wish I had that I know I can't pull off. But I got a cool beard, so we're all good. We're all square. Does Paul look at himself as the worst of all sinners? I mean, he says that. I don't know how literally I would take that statement. I think he's expressing his inner feelings. I mean, how much of a sinner would you feel towards yourself if you were the one that was persecuting, jailing, and possibly killing Christians? That's partly why he views himself that way. I think he does. But again, I think it's an expressive thing he's saying. I don't think he's being literal in the sense of like, I'm the worst of the worst of the worst. I like the entire conversation about philosophy here. Okay, I'm caught up. Okay, I'm caught up. So look, guys, this whole conversation about philosophy as being, let me actually break this down. I'm going to open up something and show you guys. And you can just Google this, and the AI stuff's pretty smart nowadays in regards to responding to some of your questions. Trying to find you guys pictures to show. Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, this is like, I wish I had graphics for this sort of stuff. Let's see. Let's use someone else's slides here.
Philosophy is a second order.
Oh. Isn't it kind of a put down to suggest I do not study enough? Have studied this stuff for well over 40 years. May not have your cognitive ability, but I can assure you I think about these things. Oh, I'm quite convinced that you think about these things. I think I was pretty clear that I said I sent some sarcasm here, so I'm going to respond likewise. And the other thing is that you're the one who said I'm stupid. Like, I wasn't putting you down, bro. I was going off of your comment. So forgive me if I have offended you, because that would be an unnecessary offense that I wouldn't intend on doing. It's very clear to me that you think about, I think when we even had the conversation, it's very clear to me that you think about these things a lot deeper than most people do. I just don't, I guess part of it is also I don't like it when people go, well, I'm like this, so God made me this way. It's like, well, no, that's just not like accurate. You're not, that's not a fair representation of my worldview. Jay Rich says, just came back to hit the like button, watching on TV. God bless everyone. Hey, God bless you too, Jay Rich. Thank you. I appreciate that. I like the fact that a lot of people are watching YouTube on their TVs. That's cool. That means that our quality is good visually and audibly. Still looking for a proper, something that would be really helpful. Okay, I guess, let me explain this way. So philosophy is a second order discipline. So science is a first order discipline. Science studies things. Philosophy studies the things studying the things. Let's put it that way. And that's what the advantage of it is that, like, the historian studies history. The philosopher of history studies history, studying historical events. And so, therefore, the philosopher of history has the ability to speak about how to do history, what's a proper methodology of doing history, versus dealing with actual historical data. And the same thing is true when it comes to science. The scientists study, say, whatever, objects and all that stuff, the natural world, we can say. The philosopher of science has opinions on whether the methodology in which science ought to be done in. And that's extremely important. The problem with maybe our modern world to a certain extent, especially those that come from a more atheistic perspective, that I've seen, this is anecdotal, it's on my experience, is that they assume all this philosophical stuff, especially the popular atheists. They're not even aware of it. And then my favorite atheist was Chris Hitchens, an outspoken kind of sort of thing. Graham Oppie is probably one of my favorite atheists right now, but he's a philosopher of religion. And so the philosopher has the ability to say, hey, here's what you're assuming, here's a correct way of doing it. Like, here's how we ought to do science. The scientists don't come up with that. They just don't. So that's why philosophy is a second order discipline versus these things that are first order disciplines. Saying if I need better cognitive abilities to understand God, I wish he made me with these abilities. Well, you do have those abilities, is what my question is, or my response is. You do have those abilities. Connor says, I don't understand the concept of choice. I use the word choice to mean when I'm uncertain and then do something one way, but can imagine having done it another way, as such as I don't subscribe to either view of free will versus determinism. okay. The popular thinkers must conform to the beliefs of everyone else, so they get or do they get thrown to the wolves. They can suggest, for example, oh, I don't actually care about incest. Who gives? Without getting torn apart. You've probably seen this within ethics a lot more, where people stand up against social evils when it was a lot easier just to go with it. I'm curious to your question again. I don't know. I think you're using that as an example of the whole free will conversation. I don't understand the concept of choice. The ability to choose between two things. How do you not understand that? Why is that difficult for you? When I'm uncertain and then do something one way. Well, if you're uncertain, if you're actually uncertain, you should withhold choice or belief. That's what an agnostic position is. Connor. Studying the things that study the things. Never heard of explained that way. I feel like a light bulb moment. So, I overuse the word thing. I absolutely overuse the word thing, but there's a reason for it. And the reason is that we have a word in Armenian, and the word is bon. And it's just so natural in Armenian to say an entire sentence, essentially, with the word bon. And the individual in front of you knows exactly what you're talking about. But all you've said is, you know the thing? That thing, give me that thing. Doesn't translate very well, but it just works. And so it just comes into my English is what I'm trying to say. You know, the thing. Jerome's doing some philosophy. I'm seeing this a lot now. The idea that a state of affairs can exist in the world without God in it, and it not be always deterministically caused by God, is something that people just can't process. The idea that the state of affairs can exist in the world with God in it not be always deterministic. Yeah, because they have a misunderstanding of what omniscience is, Jerome. Philosophers of religion have written on this subject. Like whether the question is whether God is causally a part of the affairs, the state of affairs that exist. And at least in Christian theology, God doesn't necessarily need to be the causally involved with the state of affairs. So if Arthur drinks this right now, within Christian theology, God's given me the ability for me to be the causal agent to do that, rather than him causally determining me drinking the water. So he's the causal agent to me being a causal agent upon other things. Now he's aware of what everything will happen, right? Like, so he's omniscient in that sense, defining omniscience a certain way. And there's no problem in it for me. Like that people immediately like go towards determinism, or can't see a world in which that's not the case. It's just, yeah. It's a false dichotomy. Question: what does making your eye single mean? to make our eyes single to the glory of God and our whole body will be filled. What? Can you tell me the passage you're thinking about and we'll look it up? And what translation are you reading out of? So having spent my life seeking truth, why do I not know that God exists? If not my own stupidity. Well, there could be various reasons. I can't answer that question for you, Lou, but we're not robots. We're not machines where you just put inputs and you get outputs. There could be many, many reasons why people believe the stuff they believe and reject the other stuff that they believe or don't believe. Please do not say, I must believe to believe. Yeah. Not going to say that. I don't know you. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question. Oh, okay. So Connor is saying, I don't understand the concept of choice as presented by free will / deterministic worldview. I think that's a fair point, Connor. And maybe there are some other ways of thinking about it. Again, I can't think about them like off the top of my head necessarily, but there might be some other ways of thinking about it that are like a kind of separate from that binary choice. I missed a moment to do them. What happened? There we go. Conceptually wishy-washy. It takes faith to know that God exists. What is faith? Faith is a synonymous word with trust. So you are reading out of the KJV. That's the problem. You don't know English words as they were used in 1611. So why don't you look up a modern Bible and see how they translate that? I was talking about Lou saying that God made him too stupid to understand theism or something, in jest or otherwise. Okay, I'm just going to ignore you to your conversation. As for the concept of saying thing too much, in Philadelphia, born and raised, no, in Philadelphia, we have a single word for the thing we are talking about right now. Really? The word is John? Hand me that John over there. That is cool. I wonder what the kind of etymological roots of that is. Hey, I'm learning here, Connor. Thank you for that. Totally made sense to me. I'm glad. So Matthew 6:22. Let me pull up Matthew 6:22 for you. Part of it is that you are reading the KJV, and again, so the word single is lamp. That's what it means. It's the word lamp. So if you look at any modern translation, it'll say the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. Let's see what the net says. Matthew 16, the eye is the lamp of the body. So, yeah. It's the same word that is used in Matthew 5:15 that says, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. So again, you're reading in Old English, and that's why you have a problem understanding that. Hopefully that makes more sense to you. Man, I love reading Old English. That's because you are English. A philosopher of religion is someone who proved one religion is true. No. Two of my favorite philosophers are religion. Two of my favorite philosophers of religion are both atheists. So, William Rowe, who's passed away now, was a philosopher of religion. So a philosopher of religion is someone who is philosophically thinking about religion, how religious studies ought to be done. So, for example, it is a philosopher of religion who will say, how do you define God? So think about when two individuals get into a debate, say an atheist and a Christian get into a debate, their definition of God matters quite a bit, right? If somebody comes there and says, by God, if the atheist comes in there and says, by God, I mean to say that there's an old man in the sky who controls our lives, the debate is over. The Christian will just come up there and say, I don't believe in that God. Because that's not what we mean. And so there's a general agreement as to how we use terms and what the meanings of those words are, and it comes to us by philosophers of religion. So, for example, it might be like you'll quite often see individuals who debate these academically say, we are here today to discuss the subject of whether God exists or not, and by God we mean this. And then they'll give you a definition of like a general theistic definition. That is coming from philosophy of religion. That's what philosophers of religion do. It's a really cool area. It's actually my favorite. Why am I not getting these notifications? I don't know. So here, I don't know if you have an iPhone or not, but you might want to go into your settings and make sure that your YouTube notifications are on. If all that is said, maybe what you might want to do is unsubscribe, resubscribe, and then hit the bell notification button and see if that changes things. Arthur, I was only joking. Old English is abysmal. Your joke didn't work. I tried. My IT department is hard at work right now, helping Agape out. Here's my IP representative, Joar. He says, turn on your YouTube notifications to all, or to look at the Discord notification for Arthur's server. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. I want to give a big shout out and congratulations to our very own Jerome, JR, who has now become an admin moderator on our Discord. Thank you very much for helping us out organize things in life. But he's right. Like, if the YouTube's not working, make sure Discord is on, because every time I put out a video or go live and stuff like that, we'll try to have that in the announcement section on Discord so you know that we are going on live. And sometimes you have to push send notification for each live stream. What? I have to do that? Sure. Agape, be nice. There he is trying to help you out, and then you're like trying to roast the guy. Come on, man. I've done neither of those things. Correction. I feel like I've been talking like you guys have had really good questions today. Maybe I should stream earlier. People are more awake and their questions are like way better. So if philosophy proves things, why is there literally opposing philosophies? I don't think you're using the word philosophy properly there. I think you mean like in the way you're using it in that sentence, like there are different opposing philosophies. You're using it like different ideas, ways of thought, and leaving. There's one philosophy. It's like, why are there different sciences? Doesn't make sense. I Googled, and many people have my thoughts, including philosophers, that it does not prove anything. My opinion is mine. Well, okay, just to prove a point here. I'm just going to try to prove a point here. You notice that last part? You said, my opinion is mine. That's an axiological statement. It's a redundant statement in common speech, but it's also called a truism. Your opinion is yours. Obviously, it's your opinion. It can't be someone else's. So it's unnecessary to state when you're the one saying it. I don't think, I mean, you've Googled it. Okay, I mean, we thought about various ways. There are philosophical disagreements on specific subjects, but there are scientific disagreements on specific subjects. Like there's different scientific interpretations of the data that you have presented. But to say that there are different opposing philosophies is really strange way of thinking about philosophy. And I don't know who you Googled and who you're looking at, but doesn't make much sense is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I would just say unsubscribe, resubscribe, hit the notification button. Also, these earlier streams do not discriminate against international viewers. It depends where you are internationally. That's weird, Jerome. I'm sure it does for some. Colin, how you doing, man? Came to believe in God based on science. The first cause argument is persuasive to me as well. Yeah. JP on Cuts and Downs. JP, we still haven't done that stream, man. Me and JP got to do a stream where he asks me questions. Oh, man, I got to write this down so I can text JP after the stream. Text JP after stream. Ecclesiastes is a good Bible philosophy book. Wow, you should say that. It's very, very important to us because I have, if you go to my Patreon page and you become a patron, even if that's for free, so unpaid, I have unpaid Patreon members, you will find some videos in which we're doing a Bible study through the book of Ecclesiastes. And with that, I want to remind people that I want to restart those Bible studies. So if you want to join that, if you're interested in it, please go join Patreon and you get all the notifications regarding that. Connor says, admittedly, I'm an atheist, but don't find anything like the first cause to be particularly persuasive. It seems to me that only arguments from pathos have ever been persuasive. That's fine. Truly not trying to be annoying, but should I ask my question about Mark again? Oh, shoot. I have that favorited. Dude, Dylan, thank you for the reminder, man. Sorry. Forgive me. I got you, my guy. Mark 3. I favorited it and I forgot it's there. Okay. Why is this? Okay, there we are. Mark 3. Verse 20. Mark 3, verse 20 to 21, I think. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, he's out of his mind. And then verse 31 to 35 says, and his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him, and a crowd was sitting around him. And they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered, who are my mother and my brothers? And looking about at those who sat around him, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and my sister and my mother. In the original language suggests that it was Jesus' family that thought he was insane, or the people in general, and that's why his family came to seize him. Well, I don't know the original languages, so I can't open this up in the Greek and read it and give you that kind of detail. But here's what I would say. Look at the text. Okay, so it names all these guys. Matthew and Thomas and James and Alphaeus, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon, Judas Iscariot who betrayed him. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again. So let's open up another Bible as well. Mark 3, translations help. And the net says, now Jesus went home, and a crowd gathered, so that they were not able to eat. When his family heard this, they went to restrain him, for they said he is out of his mind. So because Jesus is not eating, they're like, dude, he's lost it. So it is not the crowd that's trying to seize him. It's his family. And they're the ones that are, it's his family that are thinking he's lost his mind. He's out of his mind. Right? To answer your question. He said, if I'm Australian, I'm up at 2 a.m. for this. But the question is, are you Australian, Connor? I'm clearly saying that other people in the field of philosophy agree with me that philosophy does not prove anything. I sent a link to one above in the comments. You can't send links. YouTube will not allow you to send links. So, who's the... Okay. I don't know what the confusion here is. That philosophy proves something. Philosophy is a discipline, and I explained that it's a second-order discipline in which it studies other disciplines, including the self-analysis of philosophy. It's a very strange way of thinking, I said this from the beginning, to say that philosophy proves something. Right? Philosophy is a discipline that has branches, and then we use those branches to analyze ethics and reality and knowledge. And we use the tools within that. So, for example, logic is applied in all of these things, and then we come to correct conclusions about the universe. Catholic commentaries say that the crowd thinks Jesus is crazy, not non-Catholic commentators say that it's his family. Now you got me curious, so I got to take out my Catholic translations. So this is called the Jerusalem Bible that I'm reading out of. It's a more dynamic equivalency translation, but it is a Catholic translation, and it says, and he went home again, and once more such a crowd collected that they could not even have a meal. When his relatives heard of this, they set out to take charge of him, convinced he was out of his mind. The text clearly is translated in the Jerusalem Bible, which is a Catholic Bible, that it's his relatives who are convinced he was out of his mind. So that's the Jerusalem Bible. So I don't know about commentaries. I'm talking about the text. This is the NRSV Catholic edition. Just in case somebody is confused, there's a picture of Pope Benedict in there, so it's Catholic. Let's see what this says. Okay, so this is the NRSV Catholic edition, and chapter 3, verse. Okay, and Judas Iscariot, who would betray him. Then he went home, and the crowd came together again, so that they could not even eat. When his family heard it, they went out to restrain him, for people were saying he has gone out of his mind. So that makes sense in regards to what you're trying to say here, Dylan, a bit more. The NRSV seems to leave it in an ambiguous area in their translation. But there's definitely, it seems like there's additions. And the scribes, it says, when his family heard it, they went out to restrain him, for people were saying he's gone out of his mind. As far as I know, so let's put these down. Let me just pull up. I'll pull up an interlinear. I got you, bro. I got you. Okay, I got an interlinear. Mark 3:20 to 21. Okay, so and this is the way the Greek word ordering is, but I'm looking for particulars here. So and that's what Kai means. And comes together again a crowd, so that they were not able so much as to eat bread, right? To eat bread. And having heard of it, that the situation is going on, those belonging to him, relatives, went out to lay a hold of him, for they said, he is besides himself, or out of his mind. So this is where the debate is. The question is right here, for they said. Who is the they in reference to? That's the 4, by the way, the gar. Yeah. So again, it seems that it could be ambiguous. Again, my knowledge of the Greek, you're gonna need a better Greek. You're gonna need someone who knows Greek. I don't. In regards to breaking this down as to why there's a disagreement, I'm just curious. Okay, I'll leave that thought to myself because it's not well articulated. Agape says, I have a question. So yeah, just write Q and then put it in there, Agape. So we actually agree now. We use logic when thinking about the universe, but logic itself does not prove anything. You get, Lou, I don't think I'm miscommunicating here, man. Like, it is such a strange way to say, like, does science itself prove anything? Like, who speaks like this? So we use logic when thinking about the universe, but logic itself does not prove anything. You assume the universe is a thing that can be known. Number one, you assume the universe actually exists for you to actually apply logic to it. You assume logic is a thing that actually exists and should be trusted. Those are all philosophical categories, is what I'm trying to say. You as an atheist have to assume all of those things in order for anything to get off the ground, especially scientifically. This itself is a philosophical question. People simply think differently. Agree. Look, it is a factual thing to say people think differently, but just because people think differently doesn't mean they're right about the way they think about it. So yeah, I mean, there's people who don't think you exist. There's people who don't think morality is anything important at all. Like, so I don't care. I think they're wrong. So of course people think differently. One philosopher said, in philosophy, can you name the philosopher, by the way? Oh, Frederick Wiseman. Okay. In philosophy, there are no proofs, there are no theorems, and there are no questions which can be decided. Yes or no? Do you see the problem with that statement? He's wrong, by the way. And it's not very difficult to prove him wrong. Let's see what this guy is. Like a fifth grader can prove that guy wrong. Frederick Wiseman was an Austrian mathematician and physicist. He's not a philosopher. I don't know where you're getting this stuff from. And philosopher. Okay, I stand corrected there. What does that mean? Does he actually have degrees in philosophy? Biography. Born to a Jewish family in Vienna, Wiseman was educated in mathematics and physics at the University of Vienna. In 1922, he began to study philosophy under the tutelage of Moritz Schluck, the founder of the Vienna Circle. He immigrated to the United Kingdom in 1932 due to his annexation of Austria and Nazi Germany. He was a reader in philosophy of science at the University of Cambridge from 37 to 39. I don't know what it means to be a reader, by the way. Some British folks explained to me. And a lecturer in philosophy of mathematics at the University of Oxford. I'm curious to know what the Vienna Circle is. That's the school he was a part of, Vienna Circle. School. school of thought. The Vienna Circle was a group of philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists who met in Vienna in the 20s. Their ideas are known as logical empiricism, logical positivism, and neopositivism. So, yeah, I'm not surprised a reader is just a student. Thank you. I'm not surprised, Lou, that he would say that, considering some of his views. But here's the problem with what he actually said. I don't know if you're catching that or not. One philosopher said, in philosophy, there are no proofs. There are not theorems, and there are no questions which can be decided, yes or no. Do you realize how that's a conclusion? And that's a theory, and they're trying to prove that point, and they're trying to get you to make a conclusion? That's why it's contradictory. It violates the law of non-contradiction. It's a nonsensical statement. So, yeah, philosophers say dumb things too. Like, Connor is an atheist. He said this earlier on. Connor, am I saying something that I'm not communicating well here? Have I read the Book of Mormon? Yes, long time ago. Not recently. Why do British people have to complicate everything, dude? So, like, instead of saying, by the way, this is a lot cooler in my opinion. Instead of saying I'm a philosophy student, you're like, I read philosophy. Logical positivism is dead because it was a dumb idea. So again, Lou, I don't know what you're getting. Like, again, you're Googling, you're trying to look some of these things up. These Connor understands philosophy pretty well from my observations. Jerome studied philosophy as well. So yeah, logical positivism is kaput, as they say. Let's see here, this link that our brother posted. Logical positivism, also known as logical empiricism or neopositivism, was a philosophical movement in the empiricist tradition that sought to formulate a scientific philosophy in which philosophical discourse would be, in the perception of its proponents, as authoritative and meaningful as empirical science. Logical positivism's central thesis was that the verification principle, also known as verifiability criterion of meaning, according to which a statement is cognitively meaningful only if it can be verified through empirical observation, or it is a tautology, true by virtue of its own meaning. For example, when you said, my opinions are my own, that's a tautology. The problem with logical positivism, the way you just explained it, is that the statement itself cannot be empirically proven. This is why scientism fails. Okay. He said no question can be decided yes or no. Yeah, of course it can. Listen to what he's saying. Like, he is telling you, I am deciding that the answer to what I'm saying is a yes, that no question can be answered yes or no. That's why it said it's contradictory. And again, I I'm not saying anything that's controversial. I'm not saying anything that's Christian even. Like, this is not something that like Christians believe and say, and then non-Christian thinkers don't agree. Like this, I'm just doing philosophy. I don't know. I don't think Arthur is wrong, but also think that to some extent, this is a definition dispute that should be resolved in like 2 seconds. I agree. Amen, Connor. Arthur, leave us alone. Remember the Saturday Night Live skit that you sent me. I have ammunition to use. Point well taken, my friend. Point well taken. If I were to steelman your position against the Book of Mormon, what would your position be? What do you think the strongest argument against it is? The strongest argument against this is that Christianity has not gone off the rails, and there's no historical precedent to think that it's gone off the rails. And so therefore Joseph Smith was wrong about his restorationist movement. Larry, what's up, man? How do you feel about Matthew 21:31-32 as a proof text against works-based salvation? It's Jesus himself speaking, which is why it interests me. I have a Hebrew Israelite friend that I've been dealing with. I think I know the passage you're talking about. Let's pull it up. Matthew 21, 31, 32. Okay, so he says, is a proof text against works-based salvation. Well, let me first and foremost say that no parable should be taken as a proof text beyond its parabolic meanings. Remember, it's a parable, so don't do that. I know preachers do this a lot. I just recommend against it. So the whole text says this. What do you think? A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, go and work in the vineyard. And he said, no, I won't. And then afterwards, he changed his mind and went. And he went to the other son and said, go. And he said, I will, essentially. And he didn't. And then Jesus asks us a question. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? And they said, the first one. Jesus said, truly, I say to you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. So how is that works-based salvation when they are believing? And that's what's getting them entrance in the story, if you want to use it like that. And even when you saw it, you did not afterwards change your minds of belief. By the way, and even when you saw it is a reference to the tax collectors and the prostitutes. So here's what Jesus is essentially saying. Look, God's kingdom's come. John preached the gospel, and now Jesus is telling people to repent. And those who are saying, we will do your will, initially, aren't doing it, which is the religious leaders. And those who aren't, initially, those who say, we're not going to do your will, are the tax collectors and prostitutes. And so it has nothing to do with works, is that it's the believing, right? Like believing is mentioned here with the tax collectors. They believed him, and that's what's gone in there. So I don't know how that would be used as a proof text there, Larry. I wouldn't use that. He said using philosophy, no question can be decided, yes or no. I don't think I'm misunderstanding you, man. Not that there are no yes or no's. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, Lou, because I don't think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. And I've just restated the same thing over and over and over again in different ways. Yeah. Yeah. I just don't know what Lou is expecting when he says philosophy doesn't do anything. Well, of course, like people do things. Philosophy is not a thing. I mean, even that is a philosophical metaphysics question. Whether philosophy is a thing, it's an abstract object or something, right? You and I do things. We do science. We do philosophy. And the question is, what is more primary and what is more secondary as to the more fundamental questions, or which discipline is more primary or secondary to the fundamental questions of life and existence. Oh, you guys, I just realized I gotta go. I didn't realize it's 1:20. I have an appointment at 2:00. Hey, I'll read Lou's comment and then I'll say bye to you guys. It's been a phenomenal conversation with you. Arthur, please understand, I made a statement of my own personal thought, and you said I was just too ignorant. Not a bad word. I did simply Google search and found out many philosophies agrees with me. Okay. I'm not a philosopher, I'm just a guy from Brooklyn. Hey, I would argue that a lot of guys from Brooklyn are philosophers in various ways. Maybe I misspoke, but your reasoning is what I meant. The parable is a way of Jesus explaining sola fide. Okay. Yeah, I think it can be used like that. I misunderstood you, I guess. Is it fair to say, however, that you cannot use philosophy to prove things? You can, however, use a philosophy to prove things. I don't mind that. Right? Like the way the discipline has gone forth, and continental philosophy, analytic philosophy, all that sort of stuff. So it really depends as to how academic we're speaking about this, how commonsensical we're speaking about it. What are those categories that are just givens, I think, that we can have conversations about. And I try to keep it at a common sense level when it comes to philosophy and not go into the crazy academic aspects of it. Number one, because I don't have an interest in it. Number two, quite often I find it not to be very helpful. So yeah. Lou, I would recommend you listen to a podcast. That's a phenomenal podcast. It's called The History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps. As far as I know, the gentleman who runs it is not a Christian, but the podcast is a very, very good podcast, and you can learn quite a bit. And it's a history of philosophy podcast, but they do quite a bit of philosophy in it. I think it's helpful, and I'd recommend the rest for you guys too. I listen to it for my own enjoyment, and it's advantageous to my life. I listen to it with my kids in the car, and we have discussions, and they're really, really young. So, with that said, we're going to end with what Narek's comment is. Narek said, "You'll never walk alone." Thank you. That's assuming I can actually get my knee to work and walk. But I'll send you a text, bro. I'm hoping that in the next 2 months, I will somewhat be ready to play soccer. I will know, I guess today at 2:00, a bit more when I go in there, and I'm going to start my physical therapy going forward from today. So excited about that. I'm excited there's no tears in my knee. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you for those who just like check in on me and see how I'm doing and all that stuff. I appreciate you guys. And the community we built here. God bless you guys. Today's Thursday. I'll see you guys tomorrow when we take on some questions. Take care. God bless.